Hello, welcome to Story Time with Jen. Today we're going to be reading from the Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm. So we are going to start with Tales. The Frog Prince. Although the story dates back to a medieval Latin manuscript from the 13th century, The Frog Prince is as fresh a tale as ever about the perils of breaking a promise and the pitfalls of judging a book by its cover. In modern versions, the frog spell is broken not by throwing the frog against a wall, as in the Grimm's spirited tale, but by kissing him. As historian Mara Tater has observed, this helped spawn the lively adage that you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince, and made the enchanted frog one of her most parodied fairy tale characters in the world. Both versions have at their heart the frog as a frisky, shape-shifting animal groom, which the artist Walter Crane has captured in an inventive proto-animation drawing on page 29. Shape-shifting, a favorite staple of love stories, has long been used in fairy tales, myths, and science fiction to reveal the hidden qualities of characters such as gods and goddesses of ancient mythology, vampires, and the beastly paramour in Beauty and the Beast. Stories of enchanted frogs have been found in Asia, and elements of the tale date back to 2nd century Cupid and Psyche. The Frog Prince. In the olden days, when children wished upon the stars, there lived a king whose daughters were all very beautiful. But the youngest was so radiant that the very sun, who had seen much indeed in her time, was filled with amazement every time she looked down upon the girl. Near the king's castle was a great dark forest, and in this forest, tucked away under a majestic linden tree, there bubbled a spring. Whenever the day became unbearably hot, the youngest princess would slip out into the woods and sit at the edge of its delightful coolness. And when she was bored, she would take out the little golden ball she always carried, toss it high over her head, and catch it as it came down. This was her favorite game. One time it happened that she missed the golden ball as it whizzed past her outstretched hand, and it struck the ground and rolled straight into the water. She tried to see where it had gone, but the spring was deep, so deep that she could not see the bottom. She began to weep and cried louder and louder until she truly could not console herself. But as she lamented, she heard a voice call out, "What has happened, princess? Your wailing could make a stone beg for mercy." She looked around to see where the voice was coming from, but she saw only a frog stretching its fat, ugly head out of the ripples. "Oh, it's you, you old puddle jumper," she said. "I'm crying for my little golden ball that's fallen down into the water." "Stay calm and dry your tears," he responded. "I'm certain I can come up with an answer. But what will you give me if I bring your ball back?" "Whatever you desire, dear frog, my robes, my pearls and jewels, even the golden crown upon my head." "I am not interested in your robes, pearls, or jewel, or even your golden crown," answered the frog. "But if you would be fond of me and cherish me as if I were your friend and playmate, sitting next to you at your table, eating from your golden plate, drinking from your cup, and sleeping in your bed, if you will promise me these things, then certainly I will slip down below and bring back your golden ball." "Oh, yes," she cried. "Whatever you want, if you just bring me back my ball." But in her deepest thoughts, she was wondering, what on earth is this strange frog talking about? All it does is sit around in the spring, croaking with its own kind, and certainly it has no place among us humans. Still, the moment the frog heard her agree, he dipped his head down and plunged beneath the surface. Soon enough, he had paddled back up with the ball in his mouth and tossed it out onto the grass. The princess was overjoyed to see her shiny toy once more and picked it up and skipped away. "Wait, wait," called the frog. "Take me with you. I can't run like you can." But what good did that do? Even as he croaked after the girl with as loud as possible, "Ribbit, ribbit," deaf to all his cries, she ran straight back home. And soon enough, she had forgotten about the frog, who was left to sink back down into the spring. The next day, as she sat at the table with the king and all his court, eating from her golden plate, something could be heard flopping up the marble stairs. Squish, squash, squish, squash. And then it reached the top and beat on the door, crying, "Youngest princess, let me in!" And so she ran over, anxious to see who might be outside. But when she opened the door, all she saw was the frog. Hastily, she slammed the door shut again and sat down at the table, trembling with fear. The king could tell that her heart was pounding and asked, "Well, my child, what troubles you so? Is there a giant at the door come to eat you?" "No, no giant," she replied, "but a horrible frog." "What does this frog want from you?" "Oh, dear father, as I was playing by the spring yesterday, my golden ball fell into the water. And since I was crying so, the frog brought it back to me. And since the frog insisted on being my friend, I promised it could. But never did I think it would come out of the water and get all the way here. Now it's right outside and wants to come in and see me." Just at that moment, there came 2 more knocks at the door, and a voice rang out, "Youngest princess, let me in. Have you forgotten what you promised me by the water of the cool, cool spring? Youngest princess, let me in." At that, the king says, "Whatever promise you have made, you must also keep. Go let him in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped inside. Following right at her heels all the way to her chair, where he squatted, croaking, "Pick me up." Still, she hesitated until her father told her to. But as soon as the frog was in her seat, he wanted to climb onto the table. And once there, he said, "Push your golden plate over to me so that we may eat together." She did just that, although it was plain to see she did not do so gladly. For while the frog relished his meal, she could hardly swallow one bite. At last, licking his lips, he said, "I have had my fill, and now I'm tired. Carry me to your chambers and turn down your silken bed. It is time for us to go to sleep." At this, she burst straight into tears, since she was afraid of the cold and clammy frog, which she dreaded touching, but which was now set on sleeping in her sweet, clean bed. But the king became stern and said, "Whosoever has helped you in your time of need does not deserve your disrespect." So she got up and gathered the frog, pinching him uncomfortably between her 2 fingers, then took him upstairs and dropped him down in the corner. No sooner was she snug in bed than he hopped over and said, "I am tired and I want to sleep just as nicely as you. Lift me into your bed or I will tell your father." But with this last demand, she got mightily angry and snatched him up and hurled him with all her strength against the wall. "Now you can sleep as deeply as you like, you horrid frog." Yet as he landed, he ceased to be a frog. Instead, he became a prince with kind and winning eyes. He explained that he had been cursed by an evil witch and that no one but the princess could dissolve this spell and free him from the spring, and that it was her father's wish that he become her true companion and husband. The next day, he told her they would travel to his own father's kingdom. And so they fell asleep. And as the sun rose the next morning, a carriage arrived drawn by 8 white horses adorned with ostrich feathers on their heads and harnessed in golden chains. At the back stood the young prince's attendant, Faithful Henrik. Faithful Henrik had been so downcast ever since his master was transformed into a frog that he had bent 3 iron bands around his chest, lest his sullen heart burst with grief. Now the carriage was there to bear the young royalties back to the prince's regained kingdom, and Faithful Henrik helped them into the carriage and resumed his place at the rear, full of joy at his master's deliverance. After they had driven away, the prince heard a cracking noise behind them, like something breaking. Turning around, he called out, "Henrik, the carriage, is something wrong?" "No, sir, the carriage rides on strong. That sound is from the bands loosed from my heart, meant to keep it from breaking apart while you were exiled to the spring, a mere frog and not a king." Again, and yet again, it cracked along the way, and each time the prince thought it was the carriage breaking down. But in truth, it was one iron band after another bursting from Faithful Henrik's heart. and now that his master was restored and a happy man. The end. That's it for today's episode of Storytime with Jen. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow.